I've been playing OSU since like 2014, and I've always heard this statement that people seem to make that the OSU community is just bad. And first and foremost, this claim is really not unique to just the OSU community. Pretty much any community that has a relatively notable amount of people will have people saying that the community at large is bad, basically stereotyping everyone that's in that community. And obviously the OSU community is no exception to that. So I figured I'd just give my thoughts on that topic as a whole, which basically boils down to, as long as the community has more than like 20 or 30 people, to be honest, I feel like it's not really fair to just kind of conglomerate everyone into this one stereotype. And another thing is that even if like 99.999% of a community is not really in anyone's way or basically benign, it only takes that very small percentage of people to really stand out as a, toxic vocal minority and basically ruin the image for everyone. I'm not necessarily trying to point fingers at anyone who's making these sorts of claims, because it's obviously very natural. You find this in literally every community that could possibly exist. And speaking from my own experience and what I've noticed from a lot of other people in the OSU community as well, basically anyone that I know who's been around the OSU community for a long time, a lot of their friends and really closest friends that they talk to every day, myself included, all more or less came from the OSU community. I think the nature of OSU being entirely community operated makes it a really good place for you to be able to find friends and hang out with people, connect with people. I think OSU as a whole has this very perfect balance of everyone sort of having their own adventure alongside each other, as opposed to those online matchmaking sort of PvP games where you just kind of queue up with random people and then everyone gets mad at each other, blah blah blah, and then you finish the game, win or lose, you kind of just move on to the next one. I think the nature of OSU as a game, coupled with its very connected and community focused culture, actually lends itself very well to just being able to meet so many cool people. And another thing about OSU that I find to be really different from other games, if there's a certain piece of content that you don't like or a player that you don't like or something like that, you don't really ever need to interact with them. And by that same logic, like, if you don't really like the community, or I guess a part of the community, then you can just completely ignore that as well. It's not like some games where, you queue up into a team and you have voice chat where people can type messages to each other. And if there's a general culture of toxicity, even if it's just a minority of players that act that way, it can reach the point where you feel like toxicity is just in every single game that you play. Whereas in OSU, you just kind of make your own adventure. You pick your own songs, whatever songs you like. There's a lot of people who play the game really often and get super good, and they don't really talk to anyone else in the community itself. And likewise, a lot of people really just have, one or two little friends that they interact with, and they never really go on social media or anything like that. And speaking of social media, I think you can usually categorize a community by two main sets of categories. So you have the social media platform that people communicate on. So, you have things like Twitter or Reddit or YouTube or things like that. You even have the official forums if that game has something like that, which OSU definitely does. And then you can also usually group a community by region or the language that community speaks. And given that OSU is one of the most international games that I have probably ever seen, that also definitely applies to OSU as well. But with that said, especially on the internet, I think a community is more than just the people that you see posting. Especially on social media, the vast majority of people who interact or view the posts that are created don't actually say anything themselves. There's a lot of lurkers that I think are really vital to really any community's ecosystem, but especially on social media. I think the vast majority of any community is sort of going to be this silent majority, and then you have this basically vocal minority that actually makes most of the discussion that happens in that community. Even within each group within a community, you can usually go much deeper than that and have little pockets of friend groups and things like that. So some platforms that doesn't really apply to, like Reddit, for example, you really just have the one main subreddit for the game. I think Discord is a really good example of that. And Twitter also, it really just depends on who you're following within the community. I think one of my main points is really just that, like, no matter how many bad eggs you think there are in a community, there's always going to be this small subset of people that you really connect with. And I think the general culture of OSU as a whole, like I described earlier, lends itself really easily to even just being able to make like one or two really good friends. But yeah, I don't want this video to end up being too long or too rambly. Really, my point is just to give my own thoughts on sort of stereotyping a community at large, and just to be wary about making claims about an entire community, especially one that's so large like OSU's and has so many sub-communities and subcultures. But yeah, hopefully you guys found this video somewhat thought-provoking or insightful, and let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I will see you guys next time.